They tell you that silence is golden. In the military, they teach you that silence is survival. But no one prepares you for the silence of a dying world. No one trains you to smile at your neighbor while your heart screams that there is no tomorrow. This isn't a story about explosions or alien invasions in the traditional sense. There are no lasers, no screaming hordes, no dramatic last stands on the steps of the Capitol. There is only a whisper in my earpiece, a coordinate, and a choice that would haunt me for the rest of my life. If you've ever wondered what it truly costs to save humanity, don't look at the heroes who fought. Look at the ones who walked away. Look at us. We didn't leave because we were cowards. We left because we were ordered to let the world burn so that the spark could survive. This is the log of Captain Elara Vance, United Earth Defense Force, Sector 4. And this is how we abandoned Earth without saying goodbye. The coffee tasted like burnt rubber and regret, which was fitting considering I was sitting in a bunker 3 miles beneath the Nevada desert, waiting for the end of the world. Or at least, the end of the world as we knew it. The air recycling system hummed with a rhythmic, mechanical wheeze that had become the soundtrack of my life for the past 6 months. It was a sound that promised safety, but lately, it sounded more like a death rattle. I stared at the holographic display hovering above the tactical table. The map of the Western Hemisphere was dotted with red icons: civil unrest, resource riots, infrastructure collapse. The blue icons, representing stable zones, were shrinking. They were being swallowed by the red, like ink bleeding into water. My team was scattered around the room, each lost in their own private hell. Sergeant Marcus Brick Thorne was cleaning his rifle for the 3rd time that hour. Brick was a mountain of a man, built like a tank, and just as loud when he wanted to be. But lately he'd been quiet. Too quiet. He polished the barrel with a reverence that bordered on religious, his thick fingers moving with surprising delicacy. He knew something was up. We all did. The orders had changed. The patrols had stopped. The communications with command had gone from hourly briefings to static-filled silences that lasted for days. Then there was Jinx, our tech specialist, a wiry woman with eyes that moved too fast and hands that never stopped typing. She was currently hacking into the civilian news feeds again, her face illuminated by the cascading code. "It's getting worse," she muttered, not looking up. "Chicago is gone. Not destroyed, just gone. The grid is down. People are eating pets, Elara. Actual pets." I flinched. "Stop reading it, Jinx." "I can't stop," she said, her voice cracking. "If I stop looking, I have to feel it. And if I feel it, I might scream. And if I scream, Brick might actually hit something, and then we're all dead." Brick looked up, his expression unreadable. "I ain't gonna hit nothing, kid. Unless it's trying to kill us." Which, ironically, nothing has tried to do in 3 weeks. It's eerie, like the calm before the hurricane, but the hurricane forgot to show up. I stood up, stretching my back until it popped. Command is silent for a reason. We hold the line. We keep the perimeter secure. That's the job. "What line?" Jinx snapped, finally looking at me. Her eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted. "There's no one left to protect, Cap. The civilians evacuated themselves. The cities are empty shells. We're guarding ghosts. We guard what remains," I said, my voice steady, though my stomach churned. "That's the oath. The oath doesn't cover abandonment." Brick grumbled, snapping the rifle bolt back into place with a sharp clack. "And that's what this feels like. Abandonment." Before I could respond, the comms unit on my wrist buzzed. It wasn't the usual chirp of a routine check-in. It was a single, high-pitched tone that froze the blood in my veins. "Priority Alpha. Eyes only." The room went silent. Even the air recycler seemed to hold its breath. I tapped the interface. A text-only message scrolled across my retina display. No sender ID. No encryption key request. Just plain text. Protocol Omega initiated. Abandon Earth. Quietly. Pretend nothing is wrong. Coordinates attached. Departure window. 4 hours. Acknowledge. I stared at the words. They didn't make sense. Abandon Earth? Quietly? Pretend nothing is wrong? It was a contradiction in terms. Military operations were loud, chaotic, and obvious. You didn't just leave a planet. You didn't just walk away from billions of people. Cop. Brick's voice was low, dangerous. "What is it?" I looked at him. I looked at Jinx. I thought about the millions of people still out there, scavenging in the ruins, hoping for rescue that wasn't coming. I thought about my sister in Denver, who hadn't answered my calls in 2 weeks. I thought about the oath I had sworn to defend the Constitution and the people of Earth against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And then I thought about the phrase, pretend nothing is wrong. It was a test, or a trap, or both. Nothing, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Just a routine status update. Command, want a full inventory of supplies. Brick, check the ammo stores. Jinx, run a diagnostic on the shuttle engines. I want everything greenlit in 30 minutes. Jinx frowned. We did that yesterday. And the day before. Do it again, I said, locking eyes with her. Humor me. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. She knew me. She knew that when I gave an order that made no sense, it was because I was holding back information that would break them or get us killed. As they moved to their tasks, I slipped out of the main room and into the comms booth, sealing the door behind me. I needed to think. I needed to understand. I pulled up the coordinates attached to the message. They pointed to a remote launch site in the Mojave Desert, 50 miles north of our current position. It wasn't a military base. It was a black site facility, one that didn't exist on any public record. I had heard rumors about it during my training, a contingency plan for the elite for the essential personnel. But I had always dismissed it as conspiracy theory fodder. Now it was real. I opened a secure channel to General Holloway, my direct superior. The connection was encrypted, but I knew it was likely monitored. General, I said, keeping my voice neutral. This is Captain Vance, requesting clarification on recent operational directives. Static. Then a voice. Not Holloway's. It was synthetic, stripped of emotion. Protocol Omega is in effect, Captain. Compliance is mandatory. Deviation will result in immediate termination of assets. Do not alert your team. Do not alert the local population. Maintain standard operational appearance until departure. Acknowledge. The line went dead. I sat there, the silence pressing against my eardrums. Termination of assets. That meant us. If we didn't go, we would be killed. If we tried to warn anyone, we would be killed. If we panicked, we would be killed. We had to leave. But we had to leave without letting anyone know we were leaving. We had to pretend that everything was normal, that we were still on duty, still protecting the empty cities, still waiting for orders that would never come. It was the most cruel order I had ever received. It required us to lie to everyone we had sworn to protect, right up until the moment we vanished. I took a deep breath, steadying my hands. I couldn't tell them the truth. Not yet. If I told Brick, he would refuse to go. He would want to stay and fight, even if there was no one left to fight for. If I told Jinx, she would try to hack the system to broadcast the truth to the world and get us all executed before we even reached the shuttle. I had to manipulate them. I had to lead them in a betrayal, step by step, making it look like duty. I exited the comms booth and returned to the main room. Brick was stacking crates of ammunition with methodical precision. Jinx was typing furiously, her screens filled with engine diagnostics. Report, I said. Ammo is stocked, Brick said. Enough for a war. Which is weird, since there's no war. Engines are at 98% efficiency, Jinx said. I tweaked the fuel mixture. We could fly to Mars if we wanted to. Good, I said. Pack light. Personal gear only. We're moving out in 2 hours. Brick stopped stacking. Moving out? Where? We're on lockdown. Change of plans, I said, keeping my face blank. Command is relocating us to a forward operating base, closer to the coast. They suspect insurgent activity near the water treatment plants. It was a lie. A blatant, transparent lie. But it was wrapped in the language of bureaucracy, of mundane military procedure. Insurgents. Jinx laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Who's left to be an insurgent? The rats. Orders are orders, I said sharply. Pack your bags. We leave in convoys. Standard formation. Keep radios on standard frequency. Act normal. Brick studied me for a long moment. His eyes narrowed. He didn't believe me, but he trusted me. That was the burden of command. They trusted me to make the right call, even when the call felt wrong. All right, Cap, Brick said slowly. But if this is a wild goose chase, I'm buying the first round when we get back. And you're paying. Deal, I said. The next 2 hours were a blur of controlled chaos. We loaded the armored transports, checking every weapon, every piece of equipment. We maintained radio silence with the outside world, just as ordered. We drove out of the bunker and into the blinding sunlight of the desert. The landscape was desolate. The roads were cracked, and overgrown with weeds. Abandoned cars lined the highways, rusted skeletons of a civilization that had collapsed under its own weight. We passed a small town, its windows broken, its streets empty. A flag hung limp from a pole, faded and torn. I drove the lead vehicle, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. In a rearview mirror, I could see Brick's truck following closely behind. Jinx was in the passenger seat beside me, staring out the window. "Do you feel it?" she asked softly. "Feel what?" "The emptiness. It's heavy, like the air is thicker." "It's just dust," I said. "No." She shook her head. "It's grief. The land is grieving, Alara. We're driving through a graveyard." I didn't answer. I couldn't, because she was right, and because I was leading us away from it, away from the graves, away from the memory of who we used to be. We reached the coordinates as the sun began to set. The black site facility was hidden in a canyon, camouflaged by holographic projectors that blended the structures into the rock face. As we approached, the camouflage flickered and dissolved, revealing a massive hangar carved into the cliffside. There were no guards, no welcome committee, just a single shuttle, sleek and black, waiting on the tarmac. Its engines were already humming, a low thrum that vibrated in my chest. "Where are we?" Brick's voice crackled over the radio. "This isn't an FOB. This looks like a tomb." "Park the vehicles," I ordered. "Dismount. Bring your gear." We stepped out of the trucks, the desert heat wrapping around us like a blanket. The air smelled of ozone and jet fuel. I led them toward the shuttle, my heart pounding in my throat. As we got closer, I saw the insignia on the side of the ship. It wasn't the Earth Defense Force logo. It was a symbol I didn't recognize, a stylized star encircled by a ring of fire. "Cap," Jinx whispered, grabbing my arm. "That's not our ship. That's not even human tech. Look at the hull material. It's shifting." I looked. The metal of the shuttle seemed to ripple, like liquid mercury. It was advanced. Too advanced. "Get on board," I said. "What?" Brick shouted, raising his rifle. "Alara, what the hell is going on? Who are these people? Get on board." I turned to face them, my hand resting on my sidearm. "That is a direct order." Brick lowered his rifle slightly, confusion warring with anger on his face. "You're selling us out." "No," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm saving us. Now move." They hesitated, then followed me up the ramp. The interior of the shuttle was stark, white, and sterile. There were no seats, just restraints along the walls. We strapped ourselves in, the silence between us deafening. The ramp closed. The engines roared to life, louder than anything I had ever heard. The G-force pressed us into our seats as the shuttle lifted off, soaring out of the canyon and into the darkening sky. I looked out the viewport. Below us, the earth stretched out, vast and beautiful and dying. The lights of the cities were dim, flickering like dying embers. "We're leaving," Jinx whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We're actually leaving." Brick stared at the floor, his jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might shatter. "Why?" he asked, his voice rough. "Why us? Why now?" I didn't answer. I couldn't, because I didn't know. All I knew was that we were alive, and for now, that had to be enough. But as the shuttle broke through the atmosphere, leaving the blue haze of Earth behind, I felt a hollowness in my chest that I knew would never fill. We had abandoned our home. We had abandoned our duty. And we had done in silence. The stars ahead were cold and distant. And for the space is not silent. That a myth propagated by movies and poets who have never spent more than 10 minutes in a vacuum suit. Space is loud. It's the hum of life support systems, the creak of expanding metal, the rush of blood in your ears when the gravity planks fail to compensate for the thrust. It's the sound of your own heartbeat, amplified by the isolation, pounding against your ribs like a prisoner trying to escape. We have been in transit for 3 days. 3 days of staring at the same white walls, eating the same nutrient paste, and avoiding each other's eyes. The shuttle, which Jinx had dubbed the Ghost, was automated. There was no crew, no pilot, just an AI that responded to basic commands and ignored our questions. I sat in the mess area, picking at my food. It tasted like chalk and vitamins. Brick was doing push-ups in the corner, counting aloud in a monotone voice. 100, 101, 102. He was trying to exhaust himself, to beat the thoughts out of his body. It wasn't working. Jinx was huddled in the corner, her laptop connected to the ship's internal network. She had been trying to hack the navigation system since we left orbit. So far, she had failed. The encryption was unlike anything she had ever seen. It wasn't binary. It was quantum, shifting, and changing every time she tried to probe it. "It's alive," she muttered, rubbing her temples. "The code, it's adaptive. It learned from my attempts. It's like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands." "Stop it, Jinx," I said. "You're going to trigger a security protocol." "And what?" She snapped, looking up. Her eyes were wild, feverish. "What are they going to do? Kill us? We're already dead, Ilera. We're ghosts. We left our bodies back on Earth." Brick stopped his push-ups. He sat up, wiping sweat from his forehead. "She's right, Cap. We need answers. You owe us that much. You dragged us onto this tin can without a word. Where are we going? Who sent that message? Why did we leave?" I looked at them. My team. My friends. I had lied to them. I had manipulated them. And now, the weight of that deception was crushing me. But I couldn't tell them the truth. Not because I didn't trust them, but because I didn't know the truth myself. "I don't know," I admitted. The silence that followed was heavier than the G-force of launch. "You don't know," Brick repeated, his voice rising. "You're the captain. You give the orders. You make the calls. And you don't know?" "I received an order," I said, keeping my voice low. "Priority Alpha. Eyes only." It said abandon Earth. Quietly. Pretend nothing is wrong. That's it. No explanation. No context. Pretend nothing is wrong. Jinx echoed, her voice trembling. "While the world burned. While our families died. We pretended. We survived," I said firmly. "That's the only metric that matters right now. Survival. Survival for what?" Brick stood up, towering over me. "To be lab rats? To be slaves? We don't even know who owns this ship." "We find out," I said, "when we arrive. And if we don't like what we find, then we deal with it," I said. "Together. That's what we do. We adapt. We overcome. That's why we're here. Because Command thought we were the best. The most resilient. The most capable of handling the unknown." Brick stared at me for a long moment, then sat back down. He didn't forgive me, but he accepted the reality. We were stuck. We were alone. And we were heading into the void. On the fourth day, the ship changed course. The artificial gravity shifted, throwing us off balance. Jinx yelled as her laptop slid across the floor. Brick caught it before it hit the wall. "Change in trajectory," Jinx said, scrambling to her feet. "We're slowing down. We're approaching something." I rushed to the viewport. The stars ahead were no longer distant points of light. They were forming a pattern, a structure. It was a station, massive, intricate, and glowing with a soft blue light. It looked like a spiderweb spun from glass and steel floating in the darkness of space. It was beautiful and terrifying. "That's not human," Jinx whispered. "Look at the architecture. It's organic. It's growing." As we got closer, I saw ships docked at the station. Dozens of them. Some looked like our shuttle. Others were jagged, angular, alien. "Who are they?" Brick asked, his hand instinctively going to his rifle. "Refugees," I said, a realization dawning on me. "Like us." The shuttle docked with a gentle thud. The airlock cycled, and the inner door opened. We stepped out into a corridor that smelled of ozone and something else, something floral, sweet. It was disorienting. A figure waited for us at the end of the hall. It was humanoid but tall, slender, with skin that shimmered like pearl. It wore robes of white silk. It had no face, just a smooth, featureless mask. "Welcome," a voice said. It didn't come from a figure. It came from everywhere, echoing in our minds. "You are the last of Sector 4. I stepped forward, my hand raised in a gesture of peace. "I am Captain Ilera Vance of the United Earth Defense Force." "Who are you?" "We are the curators," the voice said. "We preserve. We protect. We collect." "Collect?" Jinx asked, her voice shaky. "Species on the brink of extinction," the curator said. Earth was deemed unsalvageable. The ecological collapse was irreversible. The social fragmentation was terminal. We intervened. We selected the essential genetic and cultural samples. You are among them. Brick laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Samples? We're not cattle. You are survivors," the curator corrected. "And you're safe. For now." "For now?" I asked. "The universe is vast," the curator said, "and dangerous. But you're no longer alone. You're part of the archive." The curator gestured for us to follow. We walked through the corridors of the station, passing rooms filled with people from different worlds. I saw beings with scales, with feathers, with multiple limbs. They all looked tired. They all looked lost. We were taken to a quarter suite. It was spacious, comfortable, and completely isolating. There were no windows. No way out. This is a prison, Brick said, pacing the room. It's a sanctuary, Jinx said, sitting on the bed. She looked exhausted. Maybe that's the same thing. I sat down beside her. We're alive. That's what matters. Is it? Brick asked. What kind of life is this? Hiding in a zoo? Watching our world die from a distance? We don't know that yet, I said. We need to learn. We need to understand what they want. And we need to find a way to communicate with the other humans here. There must be others. Jinx nodded. I could try to access the local network. If they have one. Do it, I said. But be careful. Don't let them know you're probing. For the next week, we settled into a routine. We ate the food provided. We exercised. We tried to maintain our sanity. Jinx managed to tap into the station's data stream. She found records of thousands of species, all saved from destruction, all stored in the archive. But she also found something else. A countdown. Alara, she called me into the server room she had improvised. Look at this. On her screen, a timer was ticking down. 72 hours. What is it? I asked. It's a purge cycle, Jinx said, her face pale. Every month, the curators evaluate the samples. If a species is deemed redundant or too aggressive, they are removed. Removed? Brick asked, his voice deadly quiet. Disposed of, Jinx said. Recycled. I felt a chill run down my spine. How do they decide? Based on behavior, Jinx said. Compliance. Cooperation. Peacefulness. So if we fight back, Brick started. We die. I finished. But if we submit, Jinx trailed off. We lose ourselves, I said. It was a moral dilemma, sharper than any knife. To survive, we had to be passive. To be human, we had to resist. And resistance meant death. We have 72 hours, I said. We need a plan. What kind of plan? Brick asked. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and trapped. We use their rules against them, I said. They value compliance. So we give them compliance. But we use that access to find a weakness, a backdoor, a way to contact the other humans. We organize. We prepare. And if we can't find a way out, Jinx asked, then we make sure that when they come for us, they remember us, I said. We don't go quietly. Not this time. The tension in the room was palpable. We were no longer just soldiers. We were rebels. And we were running out of time. The next 48 hours were exercised in deceptive calm. We played the part of the compliant refugees. We smiled at the curators. We accepted their food. We participated in their integration sessions, which were thinly veiled psychological evaluations. But underneath the surface we were working, Jinx had mapped out the station's layout. She found the detention blocks where the non-compliant species were held. She also found the communication hub where the curators coordinated their collection efforts. Brick had been observing the guards. They were not biological. They were drones, sleek and silent, armed with energy weapons. But they had a pattern. Every 6 hours, they rotated shifts. There was a 30-second window where the sensors in the eastern corridor were offline for maintenance. It's small, Brick said, tracing the route on Jinx's map. But it's enough. Enough for what? I asked. To get to the comms hub, Jinx said. If I can plug in, I can broadcast a signal. Not to Earth, that's too far. But to the other human sectors. There are hundreds of us scattered across this station. If we can coordinate, we can overwhelm them. Overwhelm them with what? Brick asked. We have 3 rifles and a few grenades. They have an army of drones. With numbers, I said. And with surprise, the curators underestimate us. They think we're broken, defeated. They don't know what it means to be human. They don't know that we fight hardest when we have nothing left to lose. The plan was risky, suicidal, even, but it was the only chance we had. At the designated time, we moved. We slipped out of our quarters, sticking to the shadows. Brick took point, his movement silent and precise. Jinx followed, carrying her laptop and a makeshift EMP device she had rigged from spare parts. I brought up the rear, watching for patrols. We reached the eastern corridor. The sensors were dark. We moved quickly, our hearts pounding in our chests. Every shadow looked like a drone. Every sound sounded like an alarm. We reached the comms hub. It was a large, circular room filled with glowing consoles. Jinx rushed to the main terminal and plugged in. Hurry, Brick whispered, watching the door. I'm trying, Jinx muttered, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The encryption is tough. It's fighting me. Suddenly, the lights in the room turned red. An alarm blared, a shrill, piercing sound. They know, Brick said, raising his rifle. Keep them off me, Jinx yelled. The door slid open, and drones poured in. Brick opened fire, his shots precise and deadly. Each burst took down a drone, but more replaced them. The air filled with the smell of burnt metal and ozone. I joined the fight, using my sidearm to cover Jinx. The drones were fast, dodging her shots. But Brick was a wall, standing firm, taking hits to his armor, refusing to fall. Got it, Jinx screamed. Broadcasting. A pulse of energy shot out from the terminal, rippling through the station. What did you send? I asked, ducking behind a console as a drone exploded nearby. A wake-up call, Jinx said. I sent the location of the detention blocks and the code to override the locks. I told them to rise. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the floor shook. Distant explosions echoed through the walls. Shouts, screams, the sound of rebellion. The drones paused, their heads tilting as they received new orders. They're recalling them, Brick said, panting, to contain the uprising. We have to move, I said. Now. We ran. We ran through the corridors, joining the chaos. Humans were everywhere, breaking out of cells, fighting the drones, seizing weapons. It was messy. It was violent. It was beautiful. We made it to the hangar bay. There, we found a fleet of shuttles. Not just ours. Dozens of them. Stolen. Ready. Which one? Brick asked. Any one, I said. Just get in. We boarded a shuttle, Jinx hacking the controls to bypass the security lock. The engines roared to life. As we lifted off, I looked out the viewport. The station was in flames. Smoke billowed from the corridors. The curator's perfect order was shattered. We weren't safe. We were fugitives, hunted by a galactic power that viewed us as pests. But we were free. As we jumped to warp speed, leaving the burning station behind, I looked at my team. Brick was bleeding from a wound on his arm, but he was smiling. Jinx was crying, but they were tears of relief. We did it, Jinx whispered. No, I said, looking at the stars ahead. We just started. We didn't know where we were going. We didn't know if we would find a new home. We didn't know if Earth was truly gone, or if there was still hope for those we left behind. But we were together, and we were human, and that was enough. The transmission that had ordered us to abandon Earth quietly had been a test. Not of our obedience, but of our spirit. It wanted to see if we would break, if we would accept our fate. We didn't. We chose chaos. We chose freedom. We chose each other. And as the warp drive engaged, stretching the stars into lines of light, I realized that we hadn't abandoned Earth. We had carried it with us. In our memories. In our pain. In our hope. We were the seeds of a new beginning. And we would plant them wherever we landed. The silence of space was no longer frightening. It was full of promise. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in months, I slept.